theyeshiva.net.
Vav Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. Iboyeluhu.
Recap for Isaac. You have to buy your wife something very nice for you. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Not what you like.
What she likes.
What she likes.
And that's what he's talking about before. Before
No,
the Chuma Besamim, that is basa, food. Today you give food.
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Schnitzel is not going to work today. Huh? Schnitzel won't work. Zog the Gemarah. Iboyeluhu. They asked the Shaila, the Bnei HaYeshiva, the students of the yeshiva, asked the following question. B'chor. When you have a b'chor, meaning the first male born of your cattle or your sheep, the pasuk tells us when it comes to a b'chor, Dvarim Perek Tesvav Lifnei Hashem Elokecha Teichlenu Shana B'Shana. We have an obligation when a b'chor is born to give it to the kohen. The kohen slaughters it in the Beis Hamikdash, and then he eats it as his carbon with the people he chooses to eat it with in Yerushalayim. But the Torah says he should eat it in front of Hashem, Shana B'Shana, year by year. From which we learned that cutoff time for eating the b'chor is a year. So a year is a year. But the question is, when do you start counting the year? You have a year to give it to the kohen, and the kohen has to slaughter it within the year and eat it within the year. Now once it's slaughtered, it's going to be eaten that day or the next day because it's a carbon. A carbon, b'chor can only be eaten, as we say, l'shnei yomim v'layla echad. So it could be slaughtered close to the end of the year, but it has to be eaten within the year. But the year since when? Since when does it start? So you might say from when the day it's born. If it's born on Chav Ches Tevis, so you start counting the year. You have a full year till the next Chav Ches Tevis to eat the b'chor. Yeah. Of course, today's day, or
Maybe
today's.
you have the same machloket.
So that's going to be the question. Well, that's going to be the question. Me'ema say moinen loy. From when do you count Shana a year?
What did you say?
I'm saying today's day, of course. The kohen can't be makriv in the Beis Hamikdash. So what we have to do is we have to wait till it develops a mum. If your b'chor is born, even at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, with a blemish, or it develops a blemish, it also goes to the kohen. But the kohen then just treats it like a regular animal.
Don't develop mums, don't
Right.
develop mums. So what
So
happens?
in the time of the Beis Hamikdash,
What
you
happens
get
now? There should be farms with like 8 billion b'chorim on there.
Right, so-
Why aren't there?
so-
Because after a year, you put.
one eitzah is that before it's born, before the mother gives the calf, you sell it to a non-Jew. No, but a legal sale to a non-Jew, so that when the b'chor is born, it belongs to the non-Jew, and by him, he doesn't have the mitzvah of b'chor. It's not one of the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach.
It's not an option.
What about shutfut? Jews and goy? If you have a shutfut also, is so they do in Eretz So they do in Eretz
Yeah.
They have a shutfut.
If you don't do that, in other words, me'ikar hadin, you have a b'chor, you have a calf that's born in the farm, which of course would happen if you're a farmer. It's bound to happen that there's going to be a male firstborn. It's not every animal, remember. It's bakar and soy. So
There's no pidyon?
no, there's no pidyon.
Only people.
For a b'chor of a person, there's a pidyon and one other, petah chamoy. Petah chamoy, you could be poida. You give the kohen a sheep. That's done. You have that. You have that from time to time. Somebody who has donkeys and the first donkey that's born, the male donkey, you poida.
You might give it a month before while it's in its
Yeah. Before it's born, it's not holy. Before it's born, it's not holy. Once it's born, though, it's holy. So if it is born, there's nothing to do. It's a carbon. It's hektish. You can't work with it. You can't share its wool. You can't use it for your own benefit. It's actually a challenge. You have to basically let it. You can't constrain it, put yokes on it. You have to basically let it be free until it develops a mum. Once it develops a mum, then you give it to the kohen, and the kohen could do what he wants with it, treat it like a regular animal. It's still the kohen's. It's reshus of the kohen, but he could treat it like a regular animal. The question is, when do I count this year? This year that the kohen has to eat it within the year, when do I count? What's the question? What's the problem? The question is, Abaya says, Mishasha Noilat. From the time it's born. Rabbi Yaakov Amar, Mishasha Nidal Hartzah. No. You have actually a longer time. From the time that it becomes suitable to become a carbon. Hartzah comes from the word ritzui, rotzon. In other words, from the time it becomes willing, from the time that it's oila l'rotzon, on a carbon we say it's oila l'rotzon l'fnei Hashem. It's something that generates a deep desire and pleasure kavayachal in the Rebbeinu Shalom. From the time that it's royu lahartzah, in other words, when it's suitable to become a carbon. And that is not the first day. That is the 8th day after it's born. The pasuk tells us in Vayikra Chav Beis that when your animal is born, so Shiva Yamim, 7 days it sits under its mother. V'haya Shiva Yamim tachas imay u'mayayim hashmini v'hala yeirotze lekarbon ishal Hashem. From the 8th day and on, it becomes suitable as a sacrifice to Hashem. That's why the Gemarah uses here the word hartzah, because the pasuk there uses the word yeirotze lekarbon ishal Hashem. If this is the case, Abaye Rabbi Acha says, the first 7 days, it's not right for a carbon, so you don't count it. Why don't you count that time? Because it has to be a year from when you're capable of eating it. A full year when you're capable of eating it. The first 7 days you're not, you can't be at Makriv, so you start counting from the 8th day, which means you have somewhat of an extension. Zog the Gemarah v'loi pligi. The two views are not arguing. What says they're not arguing? Abaye said from birth, Rabacha said from the 8th day. Ha betam, ha bebalmum. When Rabacha said you count from when you could bring it as a carbon, he was talking about a tam. A tam means a wholesome animal that's unblemished, and therefore you could bring it as a sacrifice in the Beis Hamikdash. And since you have to bring it as a carbon before you eat it, the kohen can't shecht it in his backyard and eat it. He has to bring it to the Beis Hamikdash as a carbon. So the first 7 days, Shiva Yamim, Yoim Hashmini, well actually the first 8 days, it's Mechusas Ma. It's not yet available, so he can't eat it. So that's why you wait from the day that he could eat it. So you should be able to have a full year when he could eat it. However, Habba Balmum, when Abaye says you count from the day of birth, you're talking about a blemished animal. As Rashi says, Shenoilad, first Rashi on Zayin, Amir Aleph, Shenoilad b'mumay. It's born with a blemish. V'oimed li shachet b'chutz. And therefore it stands to be slaughtered outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Miyoim Shenoilad u'roy lekach. You can already slaughter it from the day it's born. So you count from the day it's born.
What happened to that?
That's for a carbon. That's only for a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash. You cooked? Yeah. There is one concern that we're going to see in a moment with a nafel.
Maybe it is a nafel. You have to wait for it to establish that it's not a nafel.
Right. So therefore, there's no argument. All chulin, mundane animals, like a b'char balmum, you can't shecht, and therefore you can shecht it. You can't shecht in the Beis Hamikdash, so you count straight from birth. Frag the Gemarah, it still doesn't make sense. Balmum mi motzi achale. Can you eat a balmum right away when it's born, and therefore you say that the count begins right away? That's not the case. Why? Until the 8th day, we have a halacha that it's a suffix neufel, meaning we're in doubt that it may not survive. And if it doesn't survive, you're not allowed to shecht it and eat it. So you also have to wait to the 8th day, because then you can assume that it is a bar kayama, it's going to survive. So just like by a regular b'chor that's going to the Beis HaMikdash, a tam, you have to wait for the 8 days. By a balmum, you also have to wait for the 8 days. So the logic here seems flawed. You're telling me that by a tam the year can't start right away because you have to give him a full year of eating time, a full year when he can eat it. A balmum also needs a full year from the 8th day. You can only eat it by the 8th day. That's the question. Balmum mi matzi achile. Rashi explains. B'yom shenoilad, on the day that it's born, dilma neufel hava. Perhaps this baby calf is not going to survive. It's a neufel, meaning it's destined to die. Ve'ein shchita mitaharsoi at sheyisha shmoina yamim d'shuv nofak le'mekal neufel. And the halacha is that you have to wait 8 days, and the shchita will not make it suitable to eat. Even though you shechted the baby, you would not be allowed to eat it. You have to wait 8 days when it's alive to make sure that it goes out of the status of a Suffolk Neufel. The Tanya, the Gemarah says in Shabbos, a Bryce, the Pshim Megamli Aloimer, Kol Shesha Shloishim Yoim Ba'adam, Einei Neufel, Ube Behema Shmoina Yamim. By a person you wait 30 days, and by a behema you wait 8 days. And if you don't, it's a problem of loisoichlu kol nevela. A neufel which is destined to die is bechlal a nevela. Just like an animal that you don't shecht, an animal that just dies on its own is a nevela. And if you eat a nevela kazayis, you get malchus, because it wasn't shechted. Here, even though you shecht it, if it's a neufel, it has the status of a nevela, a potential nevela, because on its own it would die. And therefore you're not allowed to eat such an animal.
Deraisa. Rav should take care of that.
Oh, that's what you mean. Yeah, Mitzat. Yeah, you're right. That's the question of Sveik.
Right, that's right.
That's back to that question. Back to that question. Yeah, Roiv animals, of course, are not neuflim, but there is a miyut that could be, and therefore the Rabbanan made you wait 8 days. So you didn't solve the problem. And for the Gemarah, the Kimlei Beishakaloloi Chadashim. You're right. Abaya would agree you have to wait 8 days. So why does Abaya say, by a mum, you could do it right away? The answer is, Abaya was talking about a particular type of calf. The Kimlei Bei, we know for sure, it's established about this animal. Bei means him, about this baby male calf. It's talking about a male, of course, that's why it says Bei, not Ba. Shekalu loy chadashav, that the months of pregnancy have been completed. In other words, it was a full term, and therefore you can assume even before 8 days that it's not a neufel, it's not going to die, and such a calf you can eat from the day that it's born. Calf scan. Yes, and therefore you could count from the day of birth. What happens if loy kalu loy chadashav? What's full term birth? What's full term birth? So there's a famous sugi in Pchayres Dav Ches. A behema gasa would be 9 months. A behema daka would be approximately 5 months. Right? The hostile experience.
What other signs is in an animal that you know it's full term? I know with babies they say nails and hair and stuff.
No, well here you push it. You counted the time of the months. A behema gasa 9.
You don't know. You gotta see.
If you don't know, then you don't know. Then you got to wait 8 days. You're right. Then you don't know. Takif loy kol loy chadashav. Since it can only be eaten after the 8th day, you start the year counting the b'chayr only from that day. You don't count earlier.
In animals, there are signs that somebody is familiar with animals would know if it's a full term baby or not.
Perhaps, I don't know. So Rashi. No, that's it. The Kimbe Shekalolai Chadash. Okay. Believe it or not, the Gemarah finished with Baal Ta'achir. How did the Gemarah get into this whole issue of Baal Ta'achir in the beginning? Let's remember. The opening of Masechta Rosh Hashanah was Arba Rosh Hashanah, there are 4 Rosh Hashanahs. The first Rosh Hashanah was established as the first day of Nisan. The first day of Nisan was a Rosh Hashanah for Malachim, for kings. For this, the Gemarah went into the whole history of the Persian Empire to establish that the way the Jews established the anniversary of their kings was that every Rosh Chodesh Nisan was considered a new anniversary for the kings, and the reason it was important was for legal documents. Then the Gemarah said there's a second Rosh Hashanah in Nisan, and that is Pesach, begins Rosh Hashanah L'Regalim, or Rosh Hashanah for holidays. In other words, the beginning of our year when it comes to Yom Tovim is Pesach. Who cares? Call Pesach the second holiday, the third holiday. For this, we explained that the Mishnah follows the view of Reb Shimon, who holds that Baal Te'acher must follow the rhythm, the pattern, the order of the Yom Tovim. It's not just Shavuos, Sukkos, Pesach. It's Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos in that order, which is why Reb Shimon held that sometimes you get to wait 5 Yom Tovim and you're still not even a Baal Te'acher. If I was Makdish my behema on Lag BaOmer before Shavuos, so then I have Shavuos, I have Sukkos, I have Pesach, I have Shavuos, and I have Sukkos. Which, of course, Reb Shimon wouldn't agree that a year gives you Baal Ta'acher, because, according to Reb Shimon, clearly, he says sometimes you have 5 Yom Tovim, which is much more than a year. Right? It's much more than a year, but that's the view of Reb Shimon, and that's why he holds Pesach is Rosh Hashanah L'Regalim. You don't start, when it comes to Baal Ta'acher, you start with Pesach. Then the Mishnah goes off to a new Rosh Hashanah, which we'll be discussing later, which is Be'echad Be'elul. And then we come to the next Rosh Hashanah, which we're familiar with very much, which is Be'echad B'Tishrei. And we finally come to the last Rosh Hashanah, which is Rosh Chodesh Shvat, or according to Beis Hillel, Tu B'Shvat. Chamish Hasa B'Shvat.
That's 5, no?
Where did you get 5? Oh, you mean because Pesach. Right, so the Mishnah said Be'echad B'Nissen is both. So the Gemarah explained that Be'echad B'Nissen means on the day when Nissen comes in, so that day is a Rosh Hashanah, and that day, the Rosh Chodesh, which includes the whole month, includes also the second one. But yes, technically it's 5.
You have an excuse, you just get mad.
Ah?
You missed from Shivan.
Zog the Gemarah Tanu Rabbanon. We are now quoting a Braisa. What's the Braisa? The Braisa is actually going to introduce another Rosh Hashanah. Be'echad b'nissen Rosh Hashanah. Not only one, more than one, and it's not in our Mishnah, which is going to create a problem. Why our Mishnah deletes it. Tanu Rabbanon. The rabbis taught in a Braisa. Be'echad b'nissen Rosh Hashanah l'chadash. The first day of Nissen is the beginning of the year when it comes to months. In other words, we start counting our months from the first day of Nissen, meaning the month of Nissen is considered the first month of the Jewish calendar. The month of Nissen is not month 2. We don't start Adar. We don't even start Tishrei. Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Teves, Shvat, Adar. So Nissen would be the 7th month. No. Our Rosh Hashanah from months. When does our year begin? In context of what? In context of counting months, it begins Nissen. So Nissen is always our first month. That's what the Braisa says.
What's the difference, actually?
Right, so we'll see. Next, Leiburin, for leap years. The Gemarah will explain. Next, Litrumas Shkalim. The Gemarah will explain. The time when we use the new Shkalim to buy our new Karbanis, as the Gemarah will explain. Nissen is the first month. And some say Aflas Chiris Batim. Also for renting homes, which the Gemarah will explain. The point is, if I rent you a home, and I make up with you that the rent is for a year, for this year, when is the anniversary? When is the end of the year? What is the end of the year? So some say the end of the year is the last day of Adar. When it comes the first day of Nisan, the home goes back to me. Even if I rented it to you, say, middle of Shvat. And basically I say you have it for the rest of the year. That means you have it for a month and a half. Not more. Because Nisan becomes the beginning of the year for Schiras Bat.
Depends what you're saying.
No, of course. If you say
the rest of the year, then short.
the rest of this year. If you say you have it for a year, right, and I rented Tu B'Shvat, you have it till the next Tu B'Shvat. If you have it for a year. But if I say if you have it for this year, till the end of the year,
What it means.
so what does it mean? Of course, if you specify in the contract, is not a problem, then there's no issue. So Rashi, L'chotshim, L'minyan Chotshi Hashana. To the count of the months of the year, this is number 1. Now you're going to say, L'maynaf Kamina, who cares? What's the difference?
I mean, Shtar is also, but then.
Right, well, so we'll see in a moment. Liburin, Kasol Kadaitach, Rashi says, at the moment we think what it means. Kasol Kadaitach means it goes up on our mind. Leishav Bezdin, for the court to sit, Ula'ayin, to investigate, to look into the fact, Imashana Habat Tzrichel Isaber. If the following year needs to be one of 13 months, it needs to be, so to speak, a pregnant year, which of course means adding an additional month. An additional month is called a Chodesh Ha'ibur or Shnas Ha'ibur, which means a pregnant year. Why? Just like a pregnant woman is carrying an additional life in her body, this year carries an additional month. Okay? It's a larger year. U'lisrumas shkalim. What's Trumas shkalim? Lahakriv rishon karbonas halakuchim mitrumas kupis shel shikli shanazu. Nisan becomes the first month when we start offering sacrifices that we purchase from the donations in the boxes, in the chests, in the containers of the new donations that the Jewish people gave in the shkalim of this year, which we're going to elaborate on. Afla skiris batim, hamasker bayis l'chaveri, you rent a house to your friend, v'amar, l'shana zu, it's for this year, not for a year, for this year, kol sashnosoi be'echad b'nissen. The year ends on the first day of Nisan, v'afilu loy darboy el chodesh echad. Even if I rented it to him and he had it only for 1 month, in other words, I give it to him before Rosh Chodesh Adar, so he has it for a month. it's only a month. On the other hand, we see from Rashi that if I rented him, for example, Beis Adar, and I say for this year, then he has it for a full year. Why? Because we don't assume that a person will rent a house for less than a month. So therefore, we assume that it means the full year. That's what you see from Rashi, as the Gemarah will explain later. Now the Gemarah analyzes this brayso. Beis Adar. Not less than a month. A month, yeah, not less than a month. Beis Adar.
When's Rosh Hashanah?
Nissen becomes the deadline. Zog the Gemarah. L'chadshim minala. L'chadashim minala. How do you know that Rosh Chodesh Nissen is the Rosh Hashanah for months? Maybe it's Rosh Chodesh year. Maybe it's Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. Right? The Ksiv. This is a beferish pasuk in next week's parsha. Parsha's boy. Before the Jewish people leave Egypt. Now here you have to remember something. We're so used to Nissen, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz of Elul Tishrei, we forget that in Chamisha Chumsha Torah, there's never ever a mention of a name of a month. All you have over there is B'chodesh Hashvi, right? B'chodesh Harishon, as we're going to have here, B'chodesh Hasheni, B'echad L'chodesh, B'chodesh Hasheni, B'esem L'chodesh. Huh? We have the word Aviv, we'll see in a moment. We never have the name of a month. So we are giving our interpretation. So when it says on the 7th month, on the first day, Yom Tov, you should blow shofar. We of course, we know it's Tishrei. How do you know? How do you know what's number 7? Maybe you have to start counting number 1, the month that we call Sivan, and number 7 is another month. That's what we're going to be dealing with. So we said Nissen is Rosh Hashanah l'chadshim. How do you know? So you're going to tell me there's going to be a pasuk. The pasuk is going to say that the first month is going to be Nissen, but the pasuk doesn't have the word Nissen. So this is what the Gemarah is now going to analyze. The Ksiv, there's a pasuk. In Parshas Boy, before the Jews leave Egypt, Hashem speaks to Moshe and Aaron. And what does he tell them? These words. HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chadashim. Rishon hu lachem l'chadshei Hashanah. Literally translated, this month. In other words, when I'm talking to you, now we have to figure out when he's talking to them. Pasuk doesn't give a date. But this month, when I'm talking to you, hazeh, this month, so it has to be this one, is Rosh Chodesh, is the head of the months. Rishon hu lachem, it's the first one for you for the months of the year. So we have two parts of the pasuk. Apparently they're both saying the same thing. This month is the first month, and it's the first month of the months of the year.
What more you need?
What more do you need? So clearly, you have a mitzvah min ha-Torah, in Parshas Boy, that Nisan is the first month for all the months of the year. That's when you start counting. The question now is, why are you associated with Nisan? How do you know what it is? Or the time of April? Maybe it's Adar, maybe it's Elul, what we call Elul. So he says, you have to look at the whole context. This is Pasuk Beis, Shmois Yud Beis, Parshas Boy, Shmois Yud Beis, Pasuk Beis. Go to Pasuk Gimel. Dabru ala kol hadas b'nei kol hadas Yisrael lemer. Speak to the entire community of the Jewish people, say, Ba'asar l'chodesh hazeh, on the 10th day of this very month, this month that I'm telling you is the first month, every man should take a sheep for the entire family, a sheep for one family, for one home. And of course, this is the mitzvah that on the 10th day of Nisan they had to separate a sheep or a goat for the Pesach, for the Passover offering. Now you go to, okay, so what do we know? How do you know this is Nisan? So you just know in the same month, on the 10th day, you separated a sheep. Okay, maybe it's Elul. Next, Pasuk Vav. V'hoyu lechem l'mishmeres. You should guard this sheep ad arba asa yom l'chodesh hazeh, till you reach day 14 of this month. And what do you do then? V'shachatu oisai v'goymer. It says v'shachatu oisai kol kahal adas Yisrael bein ha'arbayim. The entire community of Israel should slaughter this sheep bein ha'arbayim in the afternoon, when evening begins, when dusk begins of this day 14. So in other words, you purchase the sheep on the 10th, you guard it for 4 days, and on the 14th of Nisan in the afternoon, you slaughter it. Okay, so how do you know day 14 is the month of Nisan? You're just building up. Well, you know it's all 1 month. This month is the first month. This month you buy the sheep on the 10th day. This month you slaughter the sheep on the 14th day. But we have one more pasuk, and for this we have to go away from Parshas Boy and go to Parshas Re'eh. Uksiv, we have a pasuk in Parshas Re'eh, Dvarim Perek Tazayin, Shamar es Chodesh ha'aviv. You have to guard the month of what we call spring, Aviv, the beginning of spring. When? Why are we calling it spring? Really what Aviv means is the time when the grain becomes ripe and edible. The stalks of wheat, of barley, of spelt, of oats, of rye becomes ripe when you can harvest them and eat them and enjoy them. Shomer es Chodesh Aviv, guard this month of spring. V'asisa Pesach la'Hashem Elokecha. It's in this month that you should make a Pesach for Hashem your God. And I'll continue the pasuk. Ki b'chodesh ha'aviv ha'itziyacha Hashem Elokecha miMitzrayim layla. Because in this month of Aviv, Hashem took you out of Mitzrayim at night. Clearly, we learn from here two things. Number one, the Karban Pesach has to be offered in the month of Aviv. There's no arguing with that. Number two, Yitzias Mitzrayim was in the month of Aviv. So now back to Parshas Boy. You're telling me that you're offering, we know that it's a Karban Pesach in Parshas Boy. He says it's a Karban Pesach. And we know that it's in the same month that is the first month of the year. And we know that it's the 14th day of that month. And we know that the next day they left Egypt. And we know from Parshas Rei that it's Chodesh Aviv. If it's a Chodesh Aviv, now let's establish which month is the month of Aviv. Is it Tishrei? Is it Tevis? Is it Elul? Is it Sivan? Ve'ezo Chodesh Yesh B'Aviv. What's the Chodesh where you have Aviv? What do we mean by Aviv? Aviv comes from the word Av, which means a father. It's the time when the grain reaches the first time full ripeness. Full ripeness. That's what we mean by Aviv. That's why it's from the word Av, which is the father. This is Nisan. This you don't have to speculate. This you have to go out to your fields and your farms and see which month is the grain ready. It's fully cooked, so to speak. It's fully ripe. It's fully grown. V'kari lei Rishon. And the Torah calls this month Chodesh Aviv Rishon, which you can't argue with. Is the Charaya that the month that we came to associate with Nisan, which is the month when the grains in the fields are ripe and ready for harvest, this which we call Nisan, this is the month when you have to start counting the cheshbon of your months. It's Rosh Hashanah l'chadash. That's the cheshbon of the Gemarah. L'chayre ganze glatte cheshbon. Rashi says, "Hachodesh hazel lechem u'minolon de Nisan." The ksiv yikhulam sela Pesach, uksiv kra acharina shapesach b'chodesh Aviv. What's chodesh Aviv? Sheyesh boy Aviv. What makes it? What do you mean a month of Aviv? So Rashi is medayik. It's the month in which you have Aviv. What is Aviv? Sha hatvua bechira boy. The tvua matures. The tvua, so to speak, fully. The grain fully develops and matures. Lies mevushelas. Mishal literally means cooked. Here it means, of course, fully ready, fully ripe. Gemarah b'shula. It reaches the crescendo, the zenith of being ripe. That's why it's called Aviv from the word Av. Av is the father of the family, the first one of the family. In other words, it's the first month when the tvua is tvua, when it's grain. Chodesh Aviv. Frag the Gemarah ve'ema iyar. 1 second. The month of Iyar, the fact is, you'll go to any farm, you go to any field, some grain will be ready Nisan, some grain will be ready Iyar. Same thing. So that's Chodesh Aviv. Maybe that's Chodesh Aviv. That's when Hashem spoke to Moshe and Aaron. That's when you have to start counting the months. That's when you have to bring the Karban Pesach. That's when they left Egypt. So the Gemarah, no. Be'ina Aviv veleka. Remember, the month is called Aviv. Aviv is from the word Av. Av represents the first one of the family, the father figure of the family. In other words, it's the time that the tvua is first ready. The first tvua is ready. Veleka, Iyar is not that month. Why? Because even though you have some tvua that gets fully ripe in the month of Iyar, this is not the first tvua. This is the later grain. So it's not Aviv, which comes from the word Av and Rishon. As Rashi says, Be'ina Aviv veleka, shekvar nigmira minisan. You have grain that's already ready on Nisan. The fact that you have seeds that produce and ripen up later, that's not bachir, that's not the first. Bachir from the word bachir here, right? It's not the first, it's the later ones. So it doesn't go into the category of Aviv. When do you have Aviv? When do you have the first ones? You have a Nisan. Frag the Gemarah, wait. Other? Then it should be other. Because you will have some grain that will ripen in others. So if I care, that's the father. So the Gemarah be'inei roiv aviv. The fact is, most of the grain will ripen up in Nisan. Iyar, you'll have the latecomers. Other, you'll have the early comers. But most of the grain becomes an Av, right? Most of the grain is ready in Nisan. Veleka, you don't have that in Adar. Frag the Gemarah in Midi Roiv Aviv Ksiv. It says in the Torah that Chodesh Aviv is the Chodesh when most of the grain is Aviv. It says Chodesh Aviv. Maybe even if you have a few stalks of grain that are ready for Kert. Those are the father figures. That's the beginning. So it would be Adar. Shvat I understand not. Tevis I understand not. It's still winter. It's not going to happen. But already Adar you have it. Not the majority of the farm. The majority of the farm is going to be Nisan, but you have it in Adar. So you're back to square one. Maybe Hashem spoke to Moshe and Aaron in Adar. And Adar has to be the first month. What would be the ramifications of this? The ramifications would be very simple. When it says you have to celebrate Rosh Hashanah in the 7th month, it would mean Elul. And when it says you have to celebrate Pesach in the first month, it would mean Adar. It would be a whole different story. Everything would be different. And when it says that on the 7th month, on the 15th, you have to celebrate Sukkot, and on the 7th month, on the 10th day, you have to fast, it means Yud Elul, not Yud Tishrei. So it's very, very important to know what is the first month. Avi asked before, who cares what the first month is? Who cares what the first month is? The whole Torah speaks about months. There's only one way I can know. I have to know what's 1, what's 2, what's 3, what's 4. So we have an easy way. We say Nisan, Iyar, Sivan. But we can't take this for granted. You see, you learn from here in Torah Shabbal Peh, nothing is taken for granted. We already live 3,000 years of Jewish life, so we take everything for granted. When is Pesach Nisan? I don't know. It's very nice. Nisan, there's no such a thing as Nisan in Chumash. There's no such a thing. There's no Adar, there's no Nisan. There's Rishon and Sheni. So everything has to be analyzed. Everything has to be dissected. It's just important to realize this. Everything has to be deconstructed, it's called. Deconstructie.
We also know when they did it.
How do we know when they did it? How do we know? You have a video?
We know
You have a video? What Messiah?
We know that they did it in this.
It's in Aviv.
We know that they
You're calling it Nissen. The whole word Nissen didn't exist in Jewish history. You know that.
Yes.
The months of the names of the months are not Jewish names.
When did it start?
They're Persian or Iraqi names, Babylonian names.
Yeah, it's about all about the Zara.
The Gemarah says, Shmoi Sachadashim Alu Imah Mibava. Remember, for the hundreds of years of Jewish history, it didn't exist. 400 years Jews came into Eretz Yisrael before the first Beis HaMikdash. Another 400 years the Beis HaMikdash. Almost for a millennium, there were no names of months. You know what the names were? Just like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday didn't exist. Yeah.
Sunday,
So
Monday,
other stuff is
Tuesday.
going.
That's in the Gemara. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
Okay, but I'm saying in the beginning of Jewish history, we say in Shir Shal Yom, Hayom Yom Rishon B'Shabbos, Hayom Yom Sheni B'Shabbos. In fact, the Ramban says, the Ramban writes in Chumash, it says, Zachir es Yom HaShabbos l'Katshay. You always have to remember the day of Shabbos. He says, the week is not allowed to have its own names. All the names have to be focused on Shabbos. Today is the first day leading up to Shabbos. Today is the second day from the 7th day. It's all leading up to Shabbos. Today is the 6th day, Hayom Yom Shishi, Erev Shabbos. It's always about Shabbos. It's not a Monday. According to the Ramban, Monday is not Monday, Wednesday is not Wednesday, Thursday is not Thursday. It's 2 days before Shabbos.
So
Very interesting Ramban.
So this and
Some people live like that. They say in Yiddish, a Yid Sonntag tracht Montag, was wird sein Dienstag? Mittwoch tracht Rass ist Donnerstag, schon Erev Shabbos. Man darf nicht arbeiten. Some people have that policy. You understood? A Jew, it doesn't work in English.
I'm saying
Huh?
in this
Schon Shabbos weitergegangen. Once Shabbos comes, it's schon Allah
What was the
Cheshbon.
reference? What was the reference of the months?
1, 2, 3, 4.
No. Off of what? Based off of what? You say Shabbos. You say Yom Rishon Shabbos. What was?
That's the same.
Months or Yitzias Mitzrayim, it says.
Yeah.
I'm saying January and this and
They went out and then
Yeah. Well, you're not going to compare Nisan to January. Nisan became Jewish.
right.
But it's
we
not-
made it.
We turned it into like Yiddish, like the language of Yiddish. It's a Yiddish Sprach, but it's a jargon. It comes from, German.
So it's coming from over the Zah. It's not coming from over the Zah.
Some of the names, the Mashal Tammuz, it says in Yecheskel, Noshim Mevakos es HaTammuz. The women wept for the Tammuz. There was a deity called Tammuz.
so is it all
Huh?
So it's just one?
No, Tammuz I know. Which is a big discussion in Sfarim. How the Chazal, remember, they came up with Bavel. They came up from Bavel. They weren't small people who came from Bavel. You're dealing with Ezra, like we learned before. You have Ezra and Nehemiah, Zerubbabel. You mean Elilim? Elilim, huh? So apart from the Kotzker.
Yeah.
Huh? You know, in many circles, Elul, everybody becomes religious. So the Kotzker said, Al tifnu el ha'alilim. Don't turn Elul into a god. Al tifnu el ha'alilim. The Eibishter is around also in the month of Tavis. He said,
You say you gotta stop.
Al tifnu el ha'alilim. Yeah. There was a Yid who came to the Kotzker. I'll tell you how I found there was an interesting thing. In 1991, the Lubavitcher Rebbe used to give a bracha Erev Yom Kippur after Mincha, a big bracha to the whole Olam, to Klal Yisrael. So before he started, he turned to the Gabbai and he said, announce when Ma'ariv is. So I was surprised. Yom Kippur night, you don't call it Ma'ariv, you call it Kol Nidre. He said, announce when Ma'ariv is. So there was a Yid there. So he tells me that a Yid once came to the Kotzker because his son became a Kotzker Chassid. And he was very disappointed. So he came there Erev Pesach to see how Pesach is. So he asked the Kotzker Yid, when is going to be the Seder tonight? So he said, supper is going to be at 7 o'clock. He ran away. Because it just confirmed that this is not a normal place of Judaism. He comes back Erev Yom Kippur, and he says, when is going to be Kol Nidre? The guy says, Ma'ariv is 6:30. So he lost his patience. He runs into the Kotzker Rebbe and he says, what type of disciples do you have? A Seder, he calls supper, večera, dinner, whatever he called it, and then Kol Nidre he calls Ma'ariv. So the Kotzker Rebbe said, Ich prüf Oislein and meine Chassidim, as jede večera is a Seder and jede Ma'ariv is a Kol Nidre. I teach my students that every supper is a Seder and every Ma'ariv is a Kol Nidre. Okay. So you have here a Metzias of the names of the month that come only later in Jewish history when they come from Bavel. That means it's almost 1,000 years without it. So the Gemarah now is asking the question, maybe Chodesh Ha'aviv is other. I know it's about Chodesh Ha'aviv. I'm not going to put Yitzias Mitzrayim in the month of Elul or Cheshvan or Kislev. I'm going to put it in the area of springtime. But maybe it's the month of Adar. That's the Shaila. By the way, the Ritva and the Ran say that the reason this is so important is number one, to know when the holidays are. Number two, also to understand Chumash. In Chumash, you have a lot of dates. On the second month, on the 20th day of the month, the Jews left Har Sinai, Chafiyah, the cloud went up. When is that? Pasha, to have a Havana in Chumash. Zog the Gemarah weiter. Ella Amar Reb Chizda. Reb Chizda says you have a good point. We refute the first source, Mehacha. We learned that the first month is Nisan is from another pasuk. A pasuk in Parshas Emor, when it comes to Sukkot, it says, Ach b'chamisha asa yom l'chodesh hashvi, ba'as b'chem es tvuas ha'aretz. On the 15th day of the 7th month, when you gather the grain of the earth. And the pasuk finishes, Tachoygu es chag Hashem shivas yamim, b'yom harishon shabbos, b'yom hashmini shabbos. On the 15th day of the 7th month, when you gather the grain of the earth, you make a holiday of 7 days. This is, of course, the holiday we call Sukkot. The first day is Shabbosin, the 7th day. The 8th day is Shabbosin, which we call Shmini Atzeres. Bayom Harishon, Bayom Hashmini. The intermediate days are Chol Hamoed. Ezo Chodesh yesh b'Asif. Now I ask you, which month do you gather the grain? It's not the month that you harvest the grain. It's not the month that you leave the grain outside to dry. It's the month that you gather it into the garage, to the silo, into your house. Why? Because remember, in Eretz Yisrael, the season of rain begins in the month of Cheshvan. You didn't want to leave the grain outside in the month of Cheshvan because it's going to get ruined from the rain. You wanted to leave it outside during the summer because you wanted it should dry. So when did you take it in? Hevei Omer is at Tishrei. You took it in Tishrei in order it shouldn't get wet. Before the winter, you keep it as piles in the field in order to dry it out. V'kakari leishvi, and you call it the 7th month. Now I ask you a question. So if this month is the 7th month, and this is the month we associate with Tishrei, so when is going to be the first month? The first month is going to be Nisan. If Tishrei is number 7, Nisan is going to be number 1. Frag the Gemarah. Let's see Rashi. Ve'ema Adar, the Ikazara Charfam is Bacher me Adar. you have early seeds that get ready another. Roiv aviv, you need roiv aviv. So you roiv tfuas misbakris by most of the grain. Then the Gemarah says, how do you know it's Tishrei is Shvi? Sheyesh by Asifah shemachnisim by Peres labayis b'pnei hakshamim v'chol hakayitz ein asuyas gedeshin leyabesh. A whole summer, it's piles outside in the field or outside in the yard in order to dry up. Frag the Gemarah ve'ema mar cheshvan. Maybe Chodesh HaShvi is mar cheshvan. Okay, umay Shvi le'ir. Maybe it's the 7th month that begins with Iyar. Let's start. Reb Chizda has this source to establish that Nisan is the first month. No, maybe Iyar is the first month, and Tishrei is the 7th month of Iyar. I'm sorry, it's Cheshvan, and it's the 7th month of Iyar. How do you know? In other words, you should make Iyar the first day of the month, and the 7th month will be Cheshvan. Zog the Gemarah be'ina osif v'leka. We said that it's the time that you have to gather the grain. In Cheshvan, you don't gather the grain because you already want it inside because of the rain. Frag the Gemarah, okay, ve'ema elul. Maybe it's...
What is he going to do with all those psukim? He can't say here. What is he going to do with all those psukim? Chodesh Harishon, and Nisan, and Tzias Mitzrayim, and Matakov, Pesach. What is he going to say? Pesach Sheni?
Well, no, you're right. The Torah evidence says the Gemarah could have said that we needed Aviv not to be Iyar. But the Gemarah is giving a better answer from Iyar itself. In other words, it can't be Iyar because Cheshvan can't be Chodesh HaAsif. In other words, instead of just going back to Nisan and Iyar, we're going to this issue itself. You're right, we could have also said that we already rejected Iyar, but we're also rejecting Iyar because Cheshvan won't work. So the Gemarah says, okay, Cheshvan won't work. Ve'ema elul. We're almost repeating the same discussion, but when we're coming to Tishrei and Cheshvan. And ve'ema elul, make it elul. In elul, you gather in some grain, right? Umay shvi la'adar. The 7th month would be the 7th month of what we call Adar. In other words, Adar is the first day. And here you can't give me the answer that you want to give me, that Adar is not Aviv. Adar is Aviv. It's the beginning of Aviv. It's not Roiv Aviv, but it's the beginning of Aviv. And for the Gemarah, be'iner Roiv Asiv eleka. It says the time of Asif. Most of the grain you gather not in Elul. Most of the fruits you gather in Tishrei. It says Roiv Asif. It says Ba'aspechem. You have to gather. It doesn't say how much. Maybe it's a minority. So therefore, if it's a minority, it could also be an Elul. So Elul is the 7th month. Rosh Hashanah is Elul. Yom Kippur is Elul. Sukkot is Elul. And when did Yetzias Mitzrayim happen? When was the Korban Pesach? All in Adar. You need Aviv, you have Aviv. And you know what? The Gemarah has no answer for this. From Chumash, I don't have a source. From Chumash, I don't know. There's no way. It's interesting. I don't know when Yetzias Mitzrayim was. I don't know when the Korban Pesach is. I don't know when Chodesh Aviv is. I don't know when the 7th month is Chag HaAsif is. It's around the area of Nisan, but it could be Adar. Aspechem is around the area of Tishrei, it could be Elul. Alam Ravina comes Ravina, so we rejected the first view. We rejected Reb Chizda, the second view. Ravina comes and says, you're right, I concede. Davar zeh, this thing. Which thing? That the first month is Nisan, mitoiras Moshe Rabbeinu lo lamadnu. Very interesting expression. We did not learn from the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. There's no way we would know it from Moshe Rabbeinu's text. Midivrei Kabbalah lamadnu. This is something that we derive from the words of the prophets. There's a pasuk in Zechariah Perek Aleph. Zechariah is one of the prophets. B'yoyim esrim v'arba le'ashtei asar chodesh. Hu chodesh Shvat. B'shnas shtayim l'daryavish hayadvar Adonai el Zechariah ben Berechyo ben Idoi hanavi leimer. On the 24th day of the 11th month, which is the month of Shvat, year 2 of the Persian king Daryavesh, Hashem speaks to Zechariah the prophet. We learn from here that Shvat is the 11th month. If Shvat is the 11th month, it means that Nisan is the first month. Once already, we establish. Look, la'ashtei b'yoyim esrim v'arba la'ashtei asar chodesh. What does ashtei asar chodesh mean? Ashtei asar is 11. Who? Chodesh Shvat. He says clearly who Chodesh Shvat. Yeah. This limut could only come after the Jewish people already had the names of the months, Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, etc., which they brought back from Bavel, and they have this order of the months. Now you could bring a raya, right? Now, just without this, just to tell me that Shvat is the 11th month doesn't help me, right? Why? How do you know Nisan is the first month?
We didn't learn it until then.
How do you know Nisan is the first month? Maybe Shvat comes before Tevis and Adar is the first month. There's no way of knowing it. How do you know Nisan is the first month? Maybe Shvat is the 11th month and the first month is Adar, right? And Shvat comes before Tevis. I don't know. So you have to say that this is after they already had their months, their names, and they had the order. Shvat comes after Tevis, it comes before Adar. And now it says Shvat is number 11, it means Adar is number 12, and Nisan is number 1. So now I go back and I say, when the Torah says, which month is it? From Nevi'im, we see that it's the month of Nisan, because Shvat is number 11. This is Ravina. Rabbi, the son of Ula, has another source. It says in Megillus Esther Perek Beis, Vatilokach Esther el HaMelech, Vatilokach Esther el HaMelech HaChashverosh, El Beis Malchuse b'Chodesh HaAsiri Chodesh Tevis. Esther was taken to the king Achashverosh to his palace on the 10th month. Which month is it? The month of Tevis. B'Shnas Sheva l'Malchuse. Clearly, Tevis is the 10th month. If Tevis is the 10th month and it's 10 after Nisan, Nisan is the first month. Rav Kahana Amar Mehacha. Rav Kahana goes to another pasuk in Zechariah Perek Zayin. Vayi b'shnas arba l'Daryavish HaMelech. Hayad varadinay el Zechariah ba'arba l'chodesh hatshi b'Kislev. On the 4th year of Daryavish, Hashem speaks to Zechariah on the 4th day of the 9th month, which is Kislev. If Kislev is the 9th month, Nisan is the first month. Rabbi Yaakov Amar Mehacha. Rabbi Yaakov has another source, also from Megillus Esther, Perek Ches. Vayikaru Seifrei HaMelech Be'esahi, Ba'chodesh HaShlishi Hu Chodesh Sivan, B'shloisha ve'esrim boy. The scribes of the king Achashverosh were summoned on the 3rd month, the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day of the month. They were summoned to do what? To write down a new edict and send it out to the entire empire, in which the Jews have a right for self-defense. Rabashi Amar Mehacha. Rabashi has another pasuk in Megillah. It says about Haman. Ba'chodesh harishon u'chodesh Nisan b'shnas shteim Esther l'melech HaChashverosh. Hipil pur hu agoyra l'fnei Haman miyoim liyoim u'mechodesh l'chodesh shnei masar hu chodesh Adar. Basically, Haman casts a lot from day to day and from month to month, till the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. Adar is not month 1, Adar is month number 12. And what's month 1? The one after Adar, which is Nisan, because you don't have more than 12 months.
Is there a difference? Why you have 4 different psukim over here?
1 second. If you want, you can learn it out from the same pasuk, the beginning of the pasuk. B'chodesh harishon hu chodesh Nisan, b'shnas shteim esrei l'melech HaChashverosh, hipil pur hu agoyra l'fnei Haman. On the 1st month, which is the month of Nisan, year 12 of Achashverosh, Haman cast his lot. Remember, Haman cast his lot in the month of Nisan, and it falls out on the month of Adar. On Yud Gimel Adar, that's when he's going to exterminate Chalila, all the Jews, and the Gemarah comes out Yud Gimel Nisan, right before Pesach.
Full year.
And they have a full year to prepare for extermination of the Jews. From Yud Gimel Nisan till Yud Gimel Adar, almost a full year, 11 months. Of course, during Pesach everything changes, because Haman gets hung, but the edict is still not cancelled. That's why it's only in Chav Gimel Sivan that the king is going to send out a new letter, which doesn't cancel out the edict, because he says, I can't cancel my decree. All he does is, people don't realize, he gives Jews the right to fight back. It wasn't that Purim was just a dandy holiday that came easy. There was a war, and the Jews had to fight back. All the king said was, you have my right, my permission to fight back in a year from now on Yud Gimel Adar. So that was a very heavy year. It's not like it was, everything was Amachaya. They were preparing for war on all fronts.
I understand. They wouldn't have fought back without his permission? What's the chiddush
Well,
of the
you would have
Yom
had the army and the police force against them. Now it was just private anti-Semitic citizens. You didn't have the king behind it. Initially, you had the whole empire
Then he
behind it.
retracted his decree then.
No, so he retracted. No, he didn't retract his decree. The decree was that every person should kill every single Jew in one day. That wasn't retracted. What was retracted was, number one, that the king will not assist it. In other words, that wasn't retracted. He just decided not to assist it. And number two, that Jews could fight back, which they did. But it was a bloody war.
That's not a.
They would have fought back, but they wouldn't have had. Huh?
They will not follow.
Why were killed?
No, they could have been killed. They had to go to war.
He went to war. No Jews were killed.
It doesn't say in the Megillah. It says how many of the enemies were killed. It doesn't say about Jews.
Question?
Yeah.
You said there's not more than 12 months. You run that from Nevi'im too, that because it's not 12 months.
Yeah, because we have 12 months. Yeah, we have 12. You're right. We have 12 months. Frag the Gemarah. So you see what happened here? From Moshe's Torah we didn't learn it. We learned it from Nevi'im, but then we went through a whole. Ravina gave us Shvat. Now look at this. Ravina gave us Shvat. Rabbi gave us Tevis. Reb Kahana gave us Kislev. Reb Acha gave us Sivan. You see the pattern? He starts with Shvat. He goes Tevis. He goes backwards. Shvat, Tevis, Kislev, and then Sivan. He doesn't have anything between Sivan and Kislev. And then he gives us Adar all the way at the end. And then he says, and if you want, you can give us Nisan. Your whole point is to establish that Nisan is the first month. You have a clear pasuk in Megillas Esther, Chodesh Harishan, Hu Chodesh Nisan. Why are you giving me all these other months, and then you have to make a cheshbon this way that Nisan is the first? You have a pasuk. And for the Gemarah, Dilma my Rishon Rishon Lamilse. Because in this pasuk you could touch Rishon, not the first month. Rishon for the story. Rishon Lamilse means Rishon for the story, for the event. And it says, B'chodesh Harishon u'chodesh Nisan, b'shnas shtei mesrei hipul pur. Maybe it's the first month, for example, when Haman went up to power. You could say it's the first month of the event, something that happened in the context of that story. That's when Haman's story begins. It's the first month of Haman. That's the month when Achashverosh appointed him as his prime minister, and he immediately cast his lot. And this would be an important part of the story, that he didn't waste time. He became the Führer of Persia, and immediately the same month he plotted extermination. But you can't prove that Nisan is the first month in terms of the count of the months of the year. The other psukim, however, you can prove it. That's why Nisan was only brought as a last option. So the Aruch LaNer says that the reason he doesn't start with any other month, he wants to start with Nevi'im. You have Nevi'im and you have Ksuvim. So he wants to start with Nevi'im. So he starts with Shvat, okay? Once you start with Shvat, now he goes upwards. So he goes Tevis, which is from Ksuvim, Megillas Esther. Then he goes Kislev, which is back to Nevi'im from Scharia. Then he goes to Sivan, which is back to Ksuvim, Megillas Esther. And then he goes back to Megillas Esther and he goes to Adar. He goes to Adar. He doesn't want to start with Adar, even though he's starting from the bottom up, because he doesn't want to start with the Ksuvim, he wants to start with the Nevi'im. When he finishes with that, he goes to Nisan, which is also from Ksuvim. So we established that Nisan is the first month. I just want you to take a look at Tosfos, Medivrei Kabbalah Lamadnu. It's an important Tosfos, Pashut in terms of understanding how the month developed. Zok Tosfos. We don't learn it from Chumash, we learn it Medivrei Kabbalah. He says a very interesting comment now. How do we know Nisan is the first month? Because it's brought in Nevi'im and Ksuvim, that Shvat is the 11th month. Zok Tosfos, if Shvat is the 11th month, Nisan is the first month. 1 second. But here I have a problem. How do you know when Nisan is? How do you know? You're telling me Shvat is the 11th month. Okay. Maybe Shvat comes before Tevis. Yeah. Maybe Nisan comes before Adar. Maybe Nisan comes after Iyar. Tosfos says, Loi motzi lemilav mekan menayu klal. There's no way you could learn out the truth from here Im loy noiman, if you're not going to assume, shahoisa kabbalah biyadam seder shmois hachadashim zeh, that when the Nevi'im and Ksuvim were written, they already had a tradition of the order of the names one after the other. Ravina and the other Amoraim understood the order of the names of the month. So when it says Shvat is 11, Nisan has to be the first. V'hachi amma b'Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi says in Rosh Hashanah, Shmois hachadashim alu biyadam mibavel. The names of the month were not part of original Jewish history. They came when the prophets came back from Babylonia. But Rishoina, in the beginning, they had different names. Tosfos says, what were the names? He says, he's going to give an example. What do we mean in the beginning? Not in Chumash. In Chumash, you only have numbers. But for example, in Nevi'im, before they came back from Bavel, what did Shlomo call Tishrei? So Tosfos says, B'Rishoina in the beginning, Tishrei had a name, Yerach HaEsanim. There's a pasuk in Malachim that they gathered by Shlomo, B'Yerach HaEsanim, the months of the Esanim. Why is it called Esanim? Esanim means the powerful ones, the mighty ones. Shaboy Noldu Avos. Tishrei is the month when the Avos were born. So it was called the month of the mighty ones. Cheshvan was called Yerach Bul, the month of Bul. In Malachim Perek Aleph, it says, B'Shana Achas Esrei B'Yerach Bul. Chodesh Hashmini, the 8th month. Why? Shaboy Kol Ha'olam Hela Noivel. That's the month that it gets very cold, and Hela Noivel, all the leaves fall off. Novel, Nosher, all the leaves fall off. And also, Haaretz Asuya Bulas. Also, because of the rain in Cheshvan, the earth becomes clumps. The earth becomes gushim. It becomes clumps. Also, Shaboy Boilim Lebehema Bebateyim. People bring in the animals to the house because there's no pasture in the fields. So Tishrei was called Yerach HaEsanim. Cheshvan was called Yerach Bul, the month of Bul. It's also the month when the Mabul began. Iyar was called Ziv, Yerach Ziv. Again, in Malachim Perek Aleph. This is all the era of Shlomo HaMelech. It's before they're coming back from Bavel. It's after the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim. There are different names. Yerach Ziv. Why is it called Ziv? The month of light, of ray. Sheyesh by Ziv ha'elanis, because the trees come back to their full light and splendor. Mikan ve'elech. Once they came back from Bavel, they started to commute them with names of Nisan, Iyar, and that's why it says Vayhi b'chodesh Nisan shnas esrim, Vayhi b'chodesh Kislev shnas esrim, b'chodesh Hasiri hu chodesh Tevis. This is all later on in Jewish history when the names come back, and they know also the order. Once they have the order, now you can establish that if Shvat is number 11, Nisan is number 1. But from Torah itself, I can argue differently. I can say Adar is number 1. So therefore, how do we know Nisan is Rosh Hashanah l'chadashim? It says, HaChodesh hazel lechem Rosh Chadashim Rishon hu lechem l'chad she'ashana. Which month is that? The month you brought the Karban Pesach, but I still don't know that's the month of Nisan. But from Tanakh, I know it's the month of Nisan. Once I know it's from Tanakh, it turns out retroactively that Chodesh Hazel Lechem is Nisan, and the Torah tells me that that has to become the first month of the months of the year, and that's how I have to now learn Chumash and understand all the months of the number are based on Nisan being the first month. The problem, of course, becomes why our Mishnah ignores that important Rosh Hashanah, that it's a Rosh Hashanah l'chadashim. It's only in the Brais, it's not in our Mishnah. It's a very important anniversary. When Rosh Chodesh Nisan comes, we say, now starts the count of the month. This is the first month. Why don't we have that in our Mishnah? We ignore that. We only have Rosh Hashanah l'malachim v'l'regal. Okay, Daf Zayin Amid Aleph. Before the wide lines, right before the wide lines. The wide lines start with Loi Kamaidi. We're holding the line before Lemilse. So in summation, we're left here with a question. What's the question? The Gemarah brought a Braisa. The Braisa says that the first day of Nisan is a Rosh Hashanah l'chadashim. In other words, it's the beginning of the year in terms of the count of the months of the year. That the first month is Chodesh Nisan. That's always month number 1. So that's the Rosh Hashanah. It's the first, what do we mean Rosh Hashanah? In the coming year there's going to be 12 months. The beginning, when this month 1, is Nisan. And then the Braisa brought another few details. Iburin, Trumas Shkalim, and Schiris Batim, which the Gemara is going to soon discuss the other ones. But first the focus was on item number 1. What is the meaning that it's Rosh Hashanah l'Chadashim, and how do you know it? So he brought a clear pasuk from Parshas Bay that this month is Rosh Chadashim, it's the head of all the other months. Rishon hu lachem l'Chadshei Hashanah. No, you don't need more than this. A clear pasuk that this has to be the first month. In other words, it seems literally that Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu on the month of Nisan, this has to be called Rishon. Iyar will be number 2, and Sivan will be 3, and Tammuz will be 4. Now, later we're going to see there's going to be an argument between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua when the world was created. If the world was created at the end of Elul, before Tishrei, or the world was created at the end of Adar, before Nisan. But this doesn't seem relevant to the discussion here. The discussion here is, the Ritva points this out, that no matter when the world was created, the first month that you have to count, Rishon hu lachem l'Chadshei Hashanah, has to be Nisan. Even if Rosh Hashanah, what we call Rosh Hashanah, our Rosh Hashanah, is Tishrei. Why? Because the world was created, Chafhei Elul, and Adam and Chava were created the first day of Tishrei. If that's the case, Adam and Chava, their first month was not Nisan, it was Tishrei. When they started to count their lives, Nisan was month 7, not month 1. Nonetheless, in Parshas Bo it says clearly, Rishon hu lachem l'Chadshei Hashanah, it has to be the first month for you.
Because we come from Yitzhak Mitzrayim.
Yeah, and the Rishonim say why? Because we're supposed to count the months based on Yitzias Mitzrayim. In other words, let's talk about it differently. Yitzias Mitzrayim is the time that the Jewish nation was born, or as the Gemarah puts it by Matan Torah, Yitzias Mitzrayim, which culminated in Matan Torah, the Jewish people converted. And Gershon is Gayer, Kekatan Shanoila Dami. A Ger is like a newborn child. So the public birth, humanity was born maybe in the first day of Tishrei. But there was a new humanity. The Jew was born as part of the Jewish people when? By Yitzias Mitzrayim. So Nisan is our first month. Nisan is our collective and individual first month as Jews. And part of remembering Yitzias Mitzrayim every single day is that we begin our count when we become a nation, which is during the exodus of Egypt, Yitzias Mitzrayim. And the Ritva says that's why it doesn't say Rishon hu l'Chadshei Hashanah, it says Rishon hu lachem l'Chadshei Hashanah. For the world, maybe Rishon l'Chadshei Hashanah is Tishrei, but Rishon hu lachem, for you who are being reborn as an independent people by Pesach, by Nisan, this is your first month. This is like when you emerge into the world. And this would be similar to the days of the week. We count Yom Rishon, Shabbos. We have no separate name for the day of the week. It all leads up to Shabbos. So the number of the months also, we have a commandment that it should relate to the time that we left Egypt. But l'cha'ira, however you explain it, it's a clear pasuk. On this, the Gemarah challenged it. We don't know that it's Nisan. We know that it's a first month. We know that we call it Nisan, time of April, time of Pesach, but it doesn't say that in Chumash. So he goes through the whole proof that it's a time you have to bring the carbon Pesach. Pesach was in Chodesh Aviv. Chodesh Aviv is the beginning of spring. It's when the grain becomes ripe. It's Nisan. It could be Iyar. He says Iyar is only the late ones. It's not the first ones. He says it could be Adar. He says Adar is not the majority, Adar is the minority. He says maybe it's not the majority, maybe it's even the minority, and therefore he rejects it. And then the other proofs. Chisda brings a proof from Sukkot that it says when you gather the grain, you should celebrate Sukkot, and it's the 7th month, and that's when you gather the grain. Which is the month that you gather the grain before it rains? It's going to be Tishrei, and you call it the 7th month. So if Tishrei is the 7th month, then Nisan is the 1st month. And again, he rejects it. Maybe it's Cheshvan. He says it can't be Cheshvan because you gather the grain in Tishrei. Maybe it's Elul. Again, most of the grain or fruits you don't gather in Tishrei, but in Elul, but some you do. So that was also rejected. So finally, Ravina said that there's taka no source in Chumash. Davar zeh loy mitoyres Moshe Rabbeinu loy lamadnu. There's no source in Chumash. In Chumash you wouldn't know. The source comes from Nevi'im and Ksuvim. And he goes through a whole list of psukim in Tanakh, Nevi'im and Ksuvim, from Scharia and Megillas Esther, where you see, and he starts with Shvat, goes up to Tevis, goes up to Kislev, goes up to Sivan, and then goes back to Adar, from Megillas Esther, Haman's Lot, and then even gives a pasuk for Nisan, Hippel Pur, that b'chodesh harishon u'chodesh Nisan b'shnas shtei mesel l'malach hachashverosh Hippel Pur, hu hagoyrel, as we read on Purim in the Megillah, clearly Nisan is called the first month. So we proved it not from Chumash, we proved it from where? From Nevi'im and Ksuvim, that Nisan is the first month. If Shvat is the 11th month, and Tevis is the 10th, and Kislev is the 9th, and Sivan is the 3rd, and Nisan is the 1st, obviously Nisan is the first month. So now when you go back to Chumash and it says, this should be your first month, Rishonu Lechem Lechat Shashana, is it going to be Adar or is it going to be Nisan? That was the question. Can be Tevis, that's for sure not Aviv. Tevis is winter, as you can feel outside at the moment. But it is Nisan, which we see from Tanakh clearly is considered what? The first month. Nevi'im and Ksuvim, and we can rely on Nevi'im and Ksuvim, even though Teiras Moshe does not give us this this clear, explicit message. Yeah.
In the Mishnayos, in the Mishnayos you have, let's see, in the Bavli, we go from Shabbat, we go from Brochus to Shabbos, but in Roshana we go from, I never understood this, we go from, let's say you go from Brochus, Demai, Peah, etc.
Kilayim.
But all this is answered over, a lot of these things are answered over there, but we don't learn from there, in the Rishalmi side. A lot of the things are coming from, already being answered at the on the Rishalmi side, but we're learning the Bali. See, that was one thing I never really understand. How come the Gemaras couldn't be like joined to one thing? How come there's a separation between Bavli and Rishalmi?
It's a good question, but what's the relevance here?
Because some of these things is being answered over in the, let's say I'm doing.
Oh, you're learning Yerushalmi Rosh Hashanah.
No, I'm not learning Rishalmi Rosh Hashanah. I'm learning the Mishnayos, but some of these things are connected in Demai, in Mishnayos Demai.
You're learning Mishnayos Demai or Yerushalmi Demai.
No, Mishnayos.
Okay.
So it's but over there they're answering.
Well, it was two different compositions. One was in Eretz Yisrael, and one was 100 years later in Iraq, in Babylonia. It was a whole different, it was a different composition.
Those travelers would bring them different information.
They got, in Bavli, they got Talmud Yerushalmi. That's why the halach is like Bavli, because they managed to see the Yerushalmi. It was two different compositions.
Oh, it's two different compositions.
Yeah. It's like you'll have the Shulchan Aruch of the Beis Yosef, and then you'll have the Ramah's commentary.
Okay.
You understand?
I mean, there are more based
On the Shulchan Aruch. I'm saying it's...
I look better, you have the Mishnah Berurah and you have the Rosh Hashanah, who
Yeah.
both didn't know about each other.
Right. And contemporaries. So now the question the Gemarah asks is, Zol Zayin Azoi. So why doesn't our Mishnah mention it? Why doesn't our Mishnah give us this Rosh Hashanah? Be'echad b'Nissen. We say Rosh Hashanah l'Melachim, Rosh Hashanah l'Regalim. Why not Rosh Hashanah l'Chadshah? That's the Gemarah's Shaila now, after this discussion. Zog the Gemarah, v'tana didon. What about our Tana? Our Tana. Didon means our. Our Tana and our Mishnah Daf Beis, who did not say that one of the Rosh Hashanahs that begins on the first day of Nisan is a Rosh Hashanah l'Chadshim. You have to answer, b'shanim kamayri b'chadshashim like kamayri. He's looking for something, arba Rosh Hashanim heim. A Rosh that defines the year, the whole year. When it comes to the king, it's the full year. Rosh Chodesh Nisan begins an anniversary of a year. The next Rosh Chodesh Nisan will be year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. And the same is true the other Rosh Hashanahs, whether it's Rosh Hashanah L'Maisa Behema, Rosh Hashanah L'Ilonos. You're dealing with a full year. Rosh Hashanah for Shemitah, Rosh Hashanah for Yovlos. Here you're dealing with Rosh Hashanah, not a whole year, but you're dealing with a month. Not month. That could be an explanation that it doesn't make it into our Mishnah. Rashi says, "V'tana didon the loytana b'mastis Rosh Hashanah l'chadshim." It's because b'shanim kamayri b'chadashim loy kamayri. So Tosfos asks a very interesting question. If you look in Tosfos, b'shanim kamayri, we're talking about years. Frek Tosfos, excuse me. The first one I agree. Rosh Hashanah l'malachim is a year. What about the second one? The other ones are also years. When do you start giving Maisa Behema? What's considered the year? Which Behemas that are born in this year get Maisa? I understand, Echad Be'elu. But what about Rosh Hashanah L'Regalim? What's Rosh Hashanah L'Regalim? V'kashya Da'kama L'Regalim. V'amal le'el, we just learned in the previous sugi in Gemarah, the whole sugi with Bal Ta'achar and Avav, Amid Beis, Kivan she'avra alav shana b'loy regalim, or regalim b'loy shana. The Gemarah explained that Bal Ta'achar, you're over if what? If a whole year passes without the Yamim Tovim, and the Gemarah explained how that can work, right? Those few situations. Or what was the second option? If Yamim Tovim pass without a year, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot pass without a year, you're over on Bal Ta'achar. No. So what's the Rosh Hashanah l'regalim? V'yesh l'shleima mikol makom b'chadoshim l'kamay. Tosfos says you're right. Rosh Hashanah l'regalim doesn't necessarily include a whole year, because Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot is not a whole year. It's 3 Yom Tovim. But nonetheless, it's not month by month. It's something that spans throughout the year. It's not an union of 1 month by 1 month, which is this situation where Nisan is month 1, the year is month 2. So when you say Rosh Hashanah l'chadshim, it means that this is the first month, then is the second month. It's not something that defines the whole year. On the contrary, it's a distinction of 12 units within the year. Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot.
So you need 12 months to have a year. So the Shana L'Chadoshim, because every year you start counting new 12 months. So why is it not a yearly thing?
No, you're right. You need 12 months to have a year. But when you say Be'echad B'Nisan is Rosh Hashanah, it's not Rosh Hashanah. It's not a day that includes the year. It's the first day of the first month.
You start counting the new 12 months.
Right, but how do you count the 12 months?
Rishonu lechem l'chotshei Hashanah.
No, you're right. Yishnu lechem l'chotshei Hashanah. So it's a count that today is number 1, which is going to end in 30 days or 29 days. And then you're going to count number 2. In other words, it's
1 of 12. And next year we'll start again.
Yeah, but in other words, what you're starting is not something
for the year.
You're right. You're going to have 12 together, and that's going to be a whole year. But that's his diuk, that it's not our bar Rosh Hashanah. Or to put it differently, it's not a day. It's brought in Svarim. We brought that we call it Rosh Hashanah, not Chilas Hashanah. It should be called Chilas Hashanah. So it's brought that Rosh means a head. That a head is not just the beginning of the body. Yeah, it's true. The head is the beginning of the body. A head encompasses the whole body. The brain has within it every limb, every organ, every nuance of the body. The central nervous system includes the whole body. So Rosh Hashanah is not just Chilas Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah actually is like the neurological aspect of the year. That's why Rosh Hashanah is such a precious time, because it's like in the brain, a little scratch. It's not a scratch in the brain. It's a little tiny mushy brain. It affects literally the entire body. Yeah. Yeah, ich meine, wir darf haben die Gif euch, aber the cup is ganz negeya. So I think that's connected here. In other words, when you say Rosh Hashanah is ahead of the year, in other words, the Taka has within it a nekuda of the whole year, right? Here, what does it have in it? The Rosh Hashanah of Be'echad B'Nisan is what? Of Nisan. In other words, that this is the Rosh of Nisan, which is month 1. Rishonu L'chem L'chotshei Hashanah. It doesn't define the whole Shana. It's a vart in the year. B'meilei Iyar is going to be month 2. Sivan is going to be month 3. But that's going to be a vart in the Chodesh, not in the Shana. So Tosfos says that it's not b'diuk that you speak only about Shana. You could also speak about other things, but it's not Chodesh by Chodesh. The Aruch L'Neir here makes a ha'ara, and he says that it's very shver. Because if so, why does the Gemarah say b'shanim kamayri, b'chadashim loy kamayri? Don't say b'shanim kamayri. Zog b'chadashim lo kamayri. Don't say b'shanim kamayri. The Aruch L'Neir says a very interesting chap. He says, let's remember, what's Pshat Rosh Hashanah l'regalim? What's Pshat Rosh Hashanah? What makes it Pesach Rosh Hashanah l'regalim? So the Gemarah says that it's Das Reb Shimon. Because the other shittas hold that Pesach is not Rosh Hashanah l'regalim. Shavuos could also be the first Yom Tov. Sukkot, whatever you want, call the first Yom Tov. There's not negei lahalacha. Yeah, I mean Pesach is the month of Nisan, so call it the first Yom Tov. But l'mayim of minutes, call Sukkot the first Yom Tov, right? Here it's negei that Nisan is the first month. When Tosfos, when the pasuk says you should blow shofar on the 7th month, it means Tishrei. It doesn't mean Cheshvan. It doesn't mean Elul. It's important to know that. L'mayim of minutes that Pesach is the first month, the first holiday. So the Gemarah says it's only negei in Reb Shimon, because Reb Shimon holds that Bal Ta'achar is Kisidron. It has to be in the order of Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. So Pesach is the first. If Shavuos is the first, it's not going to work. Bal Ta'achar has to be Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. And that's what Reb Shimon said, that sometimes you have to wait 5 Yamim Tovim, For Baal Ta'acha, why do you have to wait 5 Yom Tovim? Because if you will makdish the behemah before Shavuos, so you have Shavuos, Sukkos, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos. They said, Ey Basay, like Reb Shimon, Rosh Hashanah l'Regalim is for sure a year. Sometimes it's more than a year. Sometimes it's more than a year. You wait Shavuos, you wait Sukkos, you go till next Pesach, yeah? Let's say you makdish the behemah Lag Ba'omer. So Lag Ba'omer you have a full year, plus you have another Shavuos, plus you have a more Sukkos. So he says, Rosh Hashanah l'Regalim is doch according to Reb Shimon. That's what the Gemarah said, it's Das Reb Shimon. If so, it's a year, and it's more than a year. Emes, if it happens to be you a makdish before Pesach, it's not going to be a year, it's going to be only Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos. But if you makdish after Pesach, or you makdish after Shavuos, right? Before Sukkos, so you have Sukkos, yeah? You have Sukkos, you're going to have Pesach, Shavuos, you're going to have a full year, plus you wait till Sukkos. So he says it's going to be a Shana. So the Mela does work for Shanim Kamayda, that's what he's mayor. And the Taka goes only like Reb Shimon. The Gemarah says it only works according to Reb Shimon. This is Das Reb Shimon. Zog the Gemarah vayt v'lo yiburin. What's pshat lo yiburin? So Rashi said before liburin is that Bezdin sits from Rosh Chodesh Nisan to contemplate if the next year needs to be a leap year. You have to add an other. Zog the Gemarah liburin min Nisan maninan. Really? You start counting when it comes to a leap year. You start counting the first day of Nisan as the beginning of the year, meaning that on the first day of Nisan, Bezdin could say, okay, it's a new year, let's decide if we need 12 months or 13 months. Other, they can't do this. Other is part of last year, we don't discuss the next year. Now, Nisan, we're going to start thinking about the leap year. In other words, it's a Rosh Hashanah, it's a new year, it's a whole new year. Frag the Gemarah, before we analyze why our Mishnah doesn't bring it, first we have to analyze Pshat. V'hatanya, there's a clear Braisa that contradicts this. Ein ma'abrin Hashana lifnei Rosh Hashanah. Bezdin does not decide to make a leap year before Rosh Hashanah. Why not? Remember, today it's hard to understand with our communication system what would be the difficulty. But communication was extremely, extremely difficult. They were afraid that if they announced the Shnas HaIbur, let's say in the month of Iyar, the month of Sivan, the month of Tammuz, rumor goes out, by the time the next year comes out, the month of Adar, people ignore it or forget it. They forget that it's a Shnas HaIbur, and therefore they celebrate Nisan right after Adar. Really, Nisan is supposed to be a month later, and they're basically eating chametz on Pesach. They're eating chametz on Pesach, Pesach Sheni, which is Erev Pesach, Tesvav Iyar. They're eating chametz because by them it's Iyar. Really, it's Nisan because it was an extra Adar. So that you wanted that the news should come as soon as close to the month. So therefore they didn't do it before Rosh Hashanah. Ve'imi bruha, and if they did it before Rosh Hashanah, Einam uberes. It doesn't have halachic validity. It's not considered an ibur yar. Aval mipnei atchak. But in a case where you have a stressful situation, what's the stressful situation? For example, they're living in an environment where the Gentile government does not allow Bezdin to convene close to the month of Adar, or another situation is the Nasi, the leader of the Sanhedrin, who had to be there during the vote. He had to be summoned to the king for a long time, and therefore they wouldn't be able to convene before Adar. So then you still don't do it before Rosh Hashanah, but you could do it immediately after Rosh Hashanah and notify the Olam.
Do you mean the Nasi or the Nasi of the Sanhedrin?
The Nasi of the Sanhedrin. The Nasi is the Nasi of the Sanhedrin.
But I thought there was a...
The Gemarah is referring here to a story. There's a Gemarah in Sanhedrin that you cannot do Ibur Hashanah without the agreement of the Nasi, even though the Nasi is only one vote, right? It's only one vote in a vote of 71, but nonetheless you must have the Nasi on board. And there's a story about Reb Gamliel. Reb Gamliel was the Nasi of the Sanhedrin for many years, and he had to go to Syria, where the local government was, and he was delayed there, and they had to do Ibur Hashanah, and they did it with a condition that when he comes back, he's going to agree, and if not, there's no Ibur Hashanah. So generally you need a Nasi there, and if you don't know what his opinion is maybe it could create a churban. So therefore, B'shas Hatchak, if he has to leave, he's summoned, and you don't know when he's coming back, because he was responsible for the Jewish people, and you didn't know what mishagas, or what whim the governor or the emperor had. So therefore, you could do it earlier, you could do it before.
Wasn't there a Nasi that was just a political appointment that was not
That's Reish Galuso. Here we're talking about the Nasi of the Sanhedrin in Eretz Yisrael, because that's when you do Ibr Hashanah, yeah. Va'afal Pikei, nonetheless, Ein Ma'abrin Ela Adar. Even though you can sometimes do it after Rosh Hashanah, the month that you add is always Adar. You never add Kislev, Cheshvan, Tevis. You always add only the month of Adar. You make 2 others, and you do not add another month, even though it would be nice, because if you're announcing it right by Tishrei, so just do it right away, so people don't forget. No, it's always the month of Adar. What do we learn from here? We learn from here one fact, and that is, on the first day of Nisan, they were not sitting down to contemplate the leap year. They were not. Usually they were supposed to do it later in the winter. At most, you do it right after Rosh Hashanah, which is 6 months before, but you don't do it in Nisan. So what's Rosh Hashanah? Let's see Rashi. So Rashi, Yiburim in Nisan manin and bitmiyah. We have a halacha ein ma'abrin ein ma'aynin b'tzorchi tzibur lo'idia l'goy l'shibru bezdin as Hashanah. You did not be ma'ayin and you don't notify the exile that Bezdin made a leap year. Shlo yishtakeh chadavar ad adar haba. We're afraid they're going to forget it. Aval mepnei atchak shemefachadin shal yigzeru nochim elishav Bezdin. Dark times are coming and they're afraid that what? The whole institution may be dissolved. So then you could do it right after Rosh Hashanah. Why? Why not Kislev? So Rashi diksiv, Shomer es chodesh ha'aviv. You have to protect the month of spring, which we know is the month of Nisan. Chodesh hasamuch la'aviv. Aber sheyavoi aviv bizmanoi. So Rashi explains beautifully why they chose the month of Adar. Basically, the primary reason to make a leap year, why would anybody make a leap year? Why do we need an extra month in the Jewish calendar? The answer for that is, and we have to remember this Yesod throughout Masechta Rosh Hashanah. The answer briefly is as follows, because we have a problem in our system. The Roman calendar, which is the secular calendar, doesn't have this problem. The Muslim calendar doesn't have this problem. The Roman calendar, the secular calendar today, which we use also in America, is what's called a solar calendar. It follows the cycle of the sun. Take the Muslim calendar, is a lunar, I'm just giving an example, is a lunar calendar. It follows the cycle of the moon. As long as you're following one cycle, you're consistent. As long as you're consistent, your system works. The lunar and the solar orbits are very different. Why are they different? The solar orbit, as we learned previously in the Gemarah, finishes after 365 and a half days. That's a scientific astronomical fact. That is when a year ends. The question is when to begin the year, when to end the year. Okay, that you have to decide. But the year always ends after 365 and a half days because that's when the orbit is completed. What looks like the orbit of the sun around the earth or the earth around the sun, however you want to define it, but that orbit finishes after 365 and a half days. So you make a year. Gesundheit. No problem. Now you want to divide it into 12 months. Divide it into 12 months. That's what our calendar does. You take those 365 and a half days, you divide it into 12 months. The lunar calendar is very different. The orbit of the moon finishes after 29 and a half days. It's a much shorter orbit than the solar orbit. Now take 29 and a half days and multiply it by 12 and you'll have a year. You'll make 6 months, 29 days, 6 months, 30 days because it's 29 and a half days, and you'll end up with 354 days. In other words, you're 11 days short from the solar orbit. Nu, nicht gefährlich. So now you're counting a solar year. I'm counting a lunar year. My year ends 11 days before your year. Next year, my year ends 22 days before you. The next year, 33 days. The next year, 44 days. And the next year, 55 days, and so on. Nu, fine. That's what the Muslims do. Their year finishes differently. However, the seasons, summer, winter, spring, fall, that doesn't depend on the moon. That depends on the sun. If we would follow that, and we have to follow that, because the pasuk says in Boy, HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chadash mishnu lachem l'chadshei Hashanah. And what's HaChodesh hazeh? The month is based on what? The sun doesn't give you a month. The sun gives you a year. The Even Ezra says, Ein lechama chadashim klal, ve'ein lelevana shana klal. The moon got no year, and the sun got no month. These are artificial institutions just for us to be able to organize time better. So we have to count the months of the moon. It's a clear mitzvah in the Torah. And as Rashi says, HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chadashim, Yishnu lachem l'chadshei Hashanah is not repetitive. It's saying two separate things. HaChodesh is referring to what? The new moon. Herehu, Hashem showed Moshe Chidush HaLevana, and he said, when you see this new moon, it's Rosh Hashanah. We can't ignore the moon in Judaism. All of our months are based on the moon. On the other hand, it says, Shamar es Chodesh HaAviv. That's why it says Shamar. Why do you have to watch it? Well, you need bodyguards. What is this, a Chelam Amaisa? Where they're looking for Kiddush Levana and there's no moon, so they keep a bodyguard there, and he has a barrel of water, and when he sees the moon being reflected in the water, he covers the lid of water so he could protect the moon, and then tomorrow he opens it up to do Kiddush Levana, and he wonders who stole the moon. What was Shama? How do you guard Chodesh Aviv? What do you do? What do you guard? The pshat is you guard, because when you're counting your years we're counting your months according to the moon, you're not going to have Pesach in Chodesh Aviv. Why? 1 year Pesach is going to come out in Chodesh Aviv. But remember, every year your Pesach is falling behind and behind and behind and behind. So at some point Pesach is going to be in the winter. It's not going to be Chodesh Aviv. So what do you do for this? So once every 2 or 3 years, Bezdin was responsible to give the moon an extra 30 days so it could catch up. Why 3 years? Because in 3 years the discrepancy is 33 days. So that's why every 3 years. But on the other hand, you can't only do it once in 3 years always, because remember, it's 33 days. And a month is 29 or 30 days, so you're still going to be falling behind. That's why it's once in 3 years, but sometimes it's once in 2 years. And then the moon is actually going to get ahead of the sun. Because once in 2 years, it's only 22 days discrepancy, and you gave it 30 days, so it's now 8 days ahead of the sun. And that's how we equalize our calendar. So Rashi says, which month should you add? You have to add the month of Adar. Why? Because Shamar is Chodesh HaAviv. You have to protect this month of Aviv. How do you protect it? You protect it. Nisan is coming, Pesach is coming, and it's not spring yet. It's still winter. It's the end of winter. Practically speaking, the grain is not ripe. Pesach is coming. There's no ripe grain. Why? It's still winter. It's Pesach. Pesach is the moon, not the sun. So Shamar is Chodesh HaAviv. Make sure that this Chodesh is in Aviv. How? By adding another month. So which month do you add? You add the month of Adar. That's why you have to add that month. That's what Rashi is saying here. Chodesh hasamach la'aviv aber. That's how you protect the Chodesh ha'aviv. The Chodesh that samach la'aviv aber sheyavei aviv bizmanai. In Kislev, you don't do it yet. You do it in the month of Aviv.
Why couldn't you add every Chodesh so we should be even with the moon?
Because then Rosh Chodesh is not going to be on time.
Then your Rosh Chodesh is a farce. Then it's a fake. We have a physical Rosh Chodesh based on the orbit.
Right now, it's not based on the moment, though. It's based on the moment, but not, we don't say.
Because it has to be visible. Because it had to be visible. You're right. Because the system that it was when we have a calendar, the system that was put in place is that witnesses have to come and testify that they saw the moon. Right. So when you see the moon, it can't be mamish in that position of the moiled. It has to be a little off, so that people should be able to see.
It was on the point of his saying artificial.
Right, but it's still based around the facts. You're going to start adding days. It's not a month anymore. Stam, it's our own unit of time.
Basically, the calendar, we said,
We're looking for the real thing. We're looking for the
the
Chodesh.
calendar was done beforehand, according to the
Rasad you're gone. Rasad, you're gone.
They had the same cheshbon. They had the cheshbon a long time. Why did they keep it this way?
Right. Now, Rashi doesn't explain, okay, Shomer is Chodesh Aviv, add the month before. Why not 3 months before? Why can I be Shomer is Chodesh Aviv 3 months before? L'cha'oida, part of the pshat is that it's Pashat an Inyan in Metzias. What do I mean an Inyan in Metzias? Let's say they would decide that Kislev should have 2 months, or Tishrei, let's say Cheshvan should have 2 months. What can happen? Sometimes the grain can surprise you. Sometimes it could get ripe a little faster. And then they find out that you really didn't need an Ibur Yar. They may have made a mistake in a few days. However, when you do the Ibur right before Nisan, so then it's much geschmacker, because you really could see what's happening. It's very, very close to Nisan. And you see, it's Chav Ches Adar or Chav Hei Adar, and 5 days is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It's not going to be Chodesh Aviv. So therefore, it's a much more logical system of when to add your month. So that we're going to see in a moment. You're right. But generally the month of Adar. Also, Tosfos and
When
Sanhedrin,
did the stores start stocking the,
Tosfos and Sanhedrin says something else very interesting. Tosfos and Sanhedrin says that if they would add another month, you would have a problem. Because the Megillah says, Megillah Esther, like we learned before, that Haman threw his lot, Mechodesh lechodesh, Shneim Asar hu chodesh Adar. In other has to be the 12th month. If you're going to make an Ibriyar, any other month, it means that Adar is not the 12th month. Adar is the 13th month. So therefore, Tosfos Tainas, that's why you have to make the Ibriyar in Adar, so that way, Shneim Asar is always
unless
chodesh
it was
Adar.
that year.
Huh?
Unless it was that,
Right.
so it worked out.
Right.
That's what it says.
Right.
It says global warming will be able to do away
Because
with
it's getting soon as it's.
Global warming is
Supposed
understood.
to-
Yeah.
They wrote it the next year. They wrote it that year. So they wrote it knowing what it was.
Because that's the main Adar.
Again,
They wrote it in the past.
okay, if that was
Huh?
only that
They
year,
wrote the Megillah the next year. They didn't write the Megillah as it was happening. They wrote a history a year later.
What happened a year later?
So this is what happened a year later. It's not really a
Right,
sure
right.
then you don't have, you don't really have proof that the other was number 12. It
It
was
says
12
it's
that
12
year.
month.
It was the 12th that year.
Could be, yeah.
Really, that's
You're right.
not the order. You can always.
Okay, that's what he's saying. If we would make, let's say, a leap year in the month of Kislev, right? So then Adar is the 13th. Since it says like this, all the months have their name in Tanakh. It remains. This is 3, this is 6, this is 9, this is 10, and Adar could still remain. Chodesh Shnei Masel, Chodesh Adar. There's one more word that says in Mechilta, and that is, since it says Shomer is Chodesh Ha'aviv, you should watch Chodesh Ha'aviv. So what do? We add another month in order to make sure that it's Chodesh Ha'aviv. So we're Ma'aber the Shana and we're Moisef HaChodesh. He says, the Mechilta says, so it's similar to Ibra HaChodesh. Just like we're Ma'aber the Chodesh, we're also Ma'aber the year. So he says it follows the same system. When do you add the extra day to the month? In the beginning of the month, in the middle of the month, at the end of the month. And that you have to do. Why? You're not going to add 26, make 2 days of 26. Why are you making 2 days of 26? Instead of 29, you have 30 because you need to have 30 because the orbit finishes after 29 and a half days. So the leap year is compared to the Chodesh Ma'uber, to when you add a day in the Chodesh, just like the Chodesh, it's the last day. So the month, it's the last month, you add another month. That's another diyuk, why Dafka Adar, the Mechilta. The Turei Evan brings it here in the name of the Mechilta.
They add Yom Lamed or they add a 30th day?
Verstehen the Briske Lamdas.
No, what I'm saying is you made a whole, that's what I'm saying on your side. You made a whole Lamdas out of it, that you did one more day in the month.
Yeah, but when?
And if you would have added in the beginning and you come down to the month and you counted 1 is really 2
No,
days.
1.5, yeah.
So Zaina Zoi, but Lapoil, 1 is your first day of Chodesh. Day 30, that's it, that's it. Not the last day of the month.
What's tomorrow? What's today?
The day before Rosh Hashanah.
What day?
What's Haftas, no?
Chavtas, no? Sag die Gemarah weiter.
29th day, and then tomorrow's going to be the 30th day.
Amr Reb Nachem by Yitzchak. So we have a problem. What do you mean Rosh Chodesh Nisan is Rosh Hashanah Liburin? It's not Rosh Hashanah Liburin. What happens on Rosh Chodesh Nisan? The Ersh decide later. Just to add, just to say stam, just for information, Ibur Hashanah, they used to make also other cheshbonos. For example, sometimes it was a very rainy season, right? And the roads were unpaved. There was no way Jews are going to make it to Yerushalayim and Nisan for Pesach. So it would create a tremendous problem. Yeah, sometimes these types of situations, they would also add as a smach for Ibur Hashanah, to add another month to be able to, as a smach, yeah, as a support. Huh?
It didn't mess up the grain because it was finished before.
Because it was raining, maybe it wasn't finished.
Oh, at that point, the grain was already...
Yeah, could be. It didn't mess up. Whatever. That was just another smach.
At what point did they see this happening? Right before?
Yeah, but we're going to discuss now exactly what's the date that you decide.
They don't know what the rain is going to be.
Amr Reb Nachem by Yitzchak, Ma Yiburin. Yiburin means something else. Very interestingly. The exact opposite. Be'echad B'Nisan is not Rosh Hashanah Yiburin, that now is the beginning of the year. Let's decide if we're making a leap year, because you wait for that. Ma Yiburin Hafsaka Siburin. It's a Rosh Hashanah for an end, not for a beginning. What's Pshat for Hafsaka Siburin? That then you cannot start anything that's negayah to Ibur. It's hafsakas iburin. It stops the ibriyar. Meaning, till when could you make an ibriyar? Till the end of Chodesh Adar. Till the end of Chodesh Adar, Bezdin could say, you know what? We want a second Adar. The moment Rosh Chodesh Nisan comes, Rosh Hashanah li'iburin. It's a new year. You can't decide, oh, it's Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Let's make this Rosh Chodesh Adar Sheni. Oh, it's Beis Nisan. Let's make this Beis Adar Sheni.
How big a Bezdin do you need for Kiddush HaChodesh?
Kiddush HaChodesh?
Yeah.
You mean every month?
Yeah, 3.
Yeah.
Okay, and how many do you need for Ibra Hashanah? 71. Because which is Sanhedrin, right? So you have Kiddush HaChodesh by Bezdin. Kiddush HaChodesh. And then Bavak,
Because-
what a Bezdin of Shim Bechot can do. It's
Right.
Funny.
Right. Because basically Nisan came in, so what do you want to make, a leap year? What's the leap year? The year is over. Rosh Hashanah li'iburin. The year is over. What is it over for? Hafsakas iburin. Not it's a new year for the next year ibur. It's a new year that the last ibur is done, finished. Your year is over. You want a leap year? Wait another year. You'll make a leap year. This is a new year. Sorry. Echad ben Nisan came. It's a real thing. It's a leap year. This is the koyach. You say, listen, atem afilu shoygegin, atem afilu mezidin, atem afilu mutayin, right? So atem. Eila me'ed Hashem asher tikru oisam al atem. So atem afilu shoygegin, atem afilu mezidin. The koyach of Bezdin. The moment they decide it's Rosh Chodesh, even though it was a complete mistake, for example, astronomically, or the Adis maybe fooled them, or whatever happened, or even if they were Mezidin doesn't mean they were a Shoyim, then it's not a Bezdin. A Rosh is not kosher Bezdin. Mezidin means they decided we're making Rosh Chodesh the wrong day, because they decided it's the right thing, because to avoid a crisis. Hashem says, the Mishnah says in Rosh Hashanah a story, it's a fascinating story, we'll see later Daf Chaf Hei, it's an unbelievable story. Rabbi Yeshua had an argument with Rabbi Gamliel when Yom Kippur is, and Rabbi Yeshua astronomically seemed correct, and Rabbi Gamliel told him that on Yom Kippur, his Yom Kippur, which according to Rabbi Gamliel wasn't Yom Kippur, he should carry and he should bring his money and his stick. He should, to come to. And Rabbi Yeshua was horribly depressed. He had to violate Yom Kippur, and he met Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva explained to him that since Rabbi Gamliel is the Nasi of the Sanhedrin, so that taka becomes Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. That's Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is not when you decided astronomically it's Yom Kippur. That's Yom Kippur, because it says 3 times, Oisam, by the holidays, Elamer, Hashem Asher Tikru Oisam, Al Tikru Oisam. There's no Nekuda, so you could say Atem Afilu Shayagin, Atem Afilu Mezidin, Atem Afilu Anusim, or Mutayin, there's 2 gerses. It's always you. You decide the holidays. It's not just the astronomical facts. You decide it.
You just said it, that you can change it just for the rain. You can change Pesach.
Yes. Yeah. That's what it. Yes, they tried to calculate. Yeah. They knew. No, the calendar had to be made much later. The calendar was made. This Gamliel is a nasi. Well, you could study it. This calendar was a work of genius.
Wasn't it Hillel?
Hillel,
Yeah.
not the old
Not the
Hillel.
old Hillel.
A Yid Reb Hillel. The calendar was created in the 5th century, in the 400s, the same time the Talmud Bavli was basically sealed, the same time that the Sanhedrin dissolved, and they realized that it can't be perpetuated.
The last brought the raya from the Chodesh, from the Haftarah, from Novi. It's maybe in the
Macha Chodesh.
How do you know?
Right.
How could he possibly know unless they had a calendar?
Right, and that's already by David
About
Amel.
before the first Beis Hamikdash.
Right.
Of course they knew.
Right.
They had a
They
So
had a
Saadia Gaon held Fakert. He held that the Ikar were the calculations.
Right.
The calendar was establishing what the Jews always knew, and Bezdin used to calculate. They just put, that's the system. Why? He saw there's not going to be a Sanhedrin. So basically we're not going to have Rosh Chodesh anymore, because Sanhedrin has to make Rosh Chodesh, so we don't have Yom Tovim. So Judaism will fall apart. So what did he do? He made a calendar for thousands of years, and he was Mekadesh every Rosh Chodesh for history. He had a Sanhedrin make every Rosh Chodesh till today holy.
Till when?
Huh?
Individually?
6,000 years. What?
Individually or?
Yeah. Oh, you mean if they went through every one?
Yeah.
I don't know. They're Makadosh every single Rosh Chodesh. So that's why we have our Yom Tovim, not fake Yom Tovim, just to be able to eat blintzes and keep up the culture. Our Yom Tovim are halachic Yom Tovim.
They were Makadosh going
forward. Yeah. Till Bias HaMashiach, when the system will go back to the way it was up here.
Go back to the old calendar that they had.
No calendar.
No
calendar.
Hayavim Bekot Ishmael.
One.
Yeah, you need the Sanhedrin in Eretz Yisrael to do
No,
it.
but I'm saying Rabbi Gamliel, that Ma'aser with him, that was.
Oh yeah, because he was the Sanhedrin.
So when he sits as the Sanhedrin himself.
Yeah, well, there's a vote. Rabbi Gamliel can't decide halacha. Rabbi Gamliel has a representative. Yeah, of course. Of course, if the majority goes against Rabbi Gamliel, he loses. Yeah.
Rosh Chodesh app, you think?
Huh?
Years ago, the Rosh Chodesh app.
Oh, Rosh Chodesh. So there's a very nice word from I think the Yida Kaddish or the Koshen Samagid. One of them said that the Gemarah says it says Oisam 3 times. So Oisam you could read Atem. Yeah. So Atem means you. It's you under all circumstances. No difference. Afilu Mizid and Afilu Shegin Rosh Chodesh. So he said Madach when it says Oisam. You read Atem and then you say Atem under all circumstances. He says when it says Atem. Bonim Atem Lashem Alekechem. Atem afilu shaygigin, atem afilu mezid, atem afilu anusim is bonim atem Hashem Alekechem.
Also doesn't really mean
So
mezid.
it's mentioned, you say atem, then it's taken Hashem.
Huh?
If you hold the atem,
Yeah. Very good.
But they want to say mezidim means real mezidim, but that's not.
It's very hard to understand that mezid means real mezidim because then it's not a bezdin. The Gemarah says in Sanhedrin, Kesher Yishayim Einem in Aminyan. Huh?
No, it's for reason.
Also the but they probably do.
Yeah.
They want to say it because Musa, because that
Yeah.
people up.
Yeah.
You say Balatan made the
Made a what?
10 years? Made the calendar?
When he was a kid. Yeah. Zog the Gemarah, Hafsaka Siburin. Look Rashi, Shekivon Shekitchu was a Chodesh L'Shem Nissen, Paska Shana Sha'avra Maliyas Mu'beres Oid, She'ein Rashayan Lasses Nissen Other, Shekvar Nichnas Shana Acheres L'Inyan Ibor. It's a new year, you can't turn Nissen into Other. So what is it, Rosh Hashanah? Hashanah means cut off time, the end, not a beginning, it's an end. Sometimes Rosh Hashanah means a new year, sometimes Rosh Hashanah means it's the end of the last year. I don't mean it's a new year for Ibor, it's not a new year for Ibor. A new year for Ibor you have to wait, it's the end of last year. Zog the Gemarah, the Tanam, we learned in the Mishnah Masechta Ediyos about Rabbi Yeshua and Rav Papayas. Hey, Neidu, they testified, Shema Abrin Ashana Kol Adar, that if Bezdin saw after Purim, you still have to make a leap year, a whole other you could make a leap year. People used to say that you can only do a leap year ad HaPurim, till Purim. But once the 14th of Adar arrives, cutoff time. So Rabbi Yeshua and Rav Papayas testified it's not true. You could make an Ibiyar till the end of Adar, even Chav Ches Adar, Chav Tes Adar. You could say the next month is not Nisan, the next month is Adar Sheni. Now, what does this mean? This means till where? Till day 29 or day 30? So generally, it's interesting, in Sanhedrin we learn that the day 30, they also shouldn't make into a leap year. Why? Because day 30 of Adar has the potential to be Echad B'Nissen, and already the first day of Nissen you shouldn't do an Iber. However, B'Di'evet, if you take Lamed Adar and you make it, if you take Lamed Adar, you decide on Lamed Adar that tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh Adar Sheni, B'Di'evet it's fine. Okay? B'Di'evet it's fine. And if Eidos come, and they say they saw the Levana after they already made an Iburyar, not a problem. You Mekadesh the Chodesh. That day is not day 30, right? That day becomes Aleph, and it becomes Aleph Adar Sheni. So imagine, on day 30, Adar in the morning, Bezdin said we need a leap year. Okay? So what is this? This is 30 Adar. So tomorrow we're going to be Rosh Chodesh Adar Sheni. Suddenly witnesses come in the middle of the day and retroactively they figure out this is Rosh Chodesh. This is no problem. It becomes Rosh Chodesh Adar Sheni. So but the Evid it's going to work. Okay. What happens if the Eidos come before Ibiyar? So Mela they made Yom Shloshim Rosh Chodesh Nissen already. Then they decide to make an Ibiyar. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Lamed Adar it could work but the Evid. Rosh Chodesh Nissen, Rosh Hashanah Libur, and it can't work. Could be a difference in 1 hour, literally. If the Eidos came before or the Eidos came after.
What's the big tradition?
Okay.
No?
Yeah, in other words,
I mean, we probably the whole thing, but
yeah. Frag the Gemarah, my time in the man Damar Ada Purim. What's the reason to make it to say till Purim? What's the vart? I understand why you don't do it on one Nissen. The reason you can't do it on Echad ben Nissen, Rashi said clearly, you can't turn Nissen into Adar. Rish Chodesh Nissen is really Nissen. You can't turn Nissen into Adar. Why can't you turn Nissen into Adar? Because the added month has to be Adar, not Nissen. Once it's Nissen, it's Nissen. Got it. But why can't you do it after Purim? What's Pshat? And for the Gemarah, a very interesting svara. Kivan da Amar, since we have a Brais Shoyal in Behilchas HaPesach, Koydem HaPesach Shloshim Yai, the Jewish people have to start inquiring and learning and asking about halachas of Pesach 30 days before Pesach. So that is, of course, Purim, because Yudalad Nissen is Erev Pesach. And that's when you have Tikas Chametz and Bir Chametz. Asil is Zulzula B'Chametz. So what's going to happen is already Purim, all the teachers, all the Rosh Hashivas, all the Darshanim, all the Rabbanim are explaining to everybody Hilchas HaPesach. So they're telling them, they're telling all the women, all the children, all the men, 30 days, start Pesach. Now suddenly, a week later, Bezdin decide that we're adding a second Adar. What's going to happen? Asil zilzula b'chametz. They're going to send out shluchim to all the communities, and they're going to say, Rabbi Sai, there's another month of Adar. In other words, Pesach is in 2 months, not in 1 month. They're going to be mezalzel and chametz. What says they're going to be mezalzel and chametz? What does it mean they're going to be mezalzel and chametz? So the pashtus, I would say it means a lot of people will think it's Pesach is a flexible maisa. A moment ago I heard that in a month if I eat chametz, I'm going to get chorus. Suddenly I learn, you have 2 months. Okay, Nusa next year around, I have 3 months. I'm not in the mood. I still have a chametz party to go. I still have too much mashke in my cabinet. I got to finish it. Asl is all about chametz. That's one way. Rashi, however, gives up salamdus. Rashi says, Asl is azula b'chametz, shekvar min hapurim ve'elech hischil ad arshanim l'dish b'rabim b'ilchis ha'pesach. Huskaku ha'shoimim lasses pesach l'seif lamed yoy. V'im yavru bezdin es ha'shana lo yiskablu divrei shluchei bezdin l'shoimim l'dchis es ha'pesach. Rashi learns differently. This is Erlich Yidin. They say, well, 1 second. My rabbi told me in a month is Pesach. You're telling me that my rabbi hacked in Chinik. I'm not going to accept it. Huh? They're not going to accept it. Shekvar shamu min hadarshanim. They heard already from the darshanim. Today it wouldn't be a chashash. Nobody listens to any darshanim. Nobody trusts anybody. But then it's a big chashash. They're going to listen. They're going to take it seriously. Now the darshanim meant well, of course. They weren't lying, but they didn't know they don't have nevuah what Bezdin is going to do. It's going to create chaos. So Mela, they time it after Purim. You don't do it because after Purim already people are getting ready for Pesach. Psychologically, it's going to make a problem. V'idach. So why did it be Yeshua and if Papaya say you could do it after Purim? The answer is they hold that this is a very remote problem because Meida Yediyah, the crowd knows the hashta shata ma'abarta b'chushbana talya milsa. People are not as illiterate as you think. They know that a leap year is not coming because somebody is in a mood to add another month. A leap year is always taloy and cheshbon, meaning b'chushbana talya milsa. What's pshat b'chushbana talya milsa? Summer and winter depend on the seasons of the sun, and when you have a situation that Pesach is going to be before spring arrives, you have to go into your calculations and figure it out if you need a leap year. V'savri, they say, chushbanu hudaloi salik lula rabbanan ada idna. When the shluchim of Bezdin come and say there's a leap year, they're going to say, why didn't they tell us 2 months ago? Because till now, the rabbis didn't have a chance to make the cheshbonis until now, and therefore that it will not create chaos. They'll understand that it's not an essential paradox, and they won't have cognitive dissonance. Frag the Gemarah v'tana didan. So why does our Mishnah not mention it? Rosh Hashanah be'echad b'nissen, Rosh Hashanah l'melachim v'le'burim. So the Gemarah b'haschala kamayri b'afsaka loy kamayri. Same mahalach. Our Rosh Hashanah is the head of the year that includes the whole year. What's going to happen this year? We're looking for beginnings. We're not looking for ends. This is a Rosh Hashanah that's not starting. Nothing starts on Echad B'Nissen for Ibn Hashanah. You have to wait till after Rosh Hashanah, we said. Better to wait late. What is it a Rosh Hashanah for? cutoff time. Be'echad b'nissen, I can't add an ibayar. Ba'aschala kamaydi, ba'afsaka kamaydi. We're not looking at Rosh Hashanah, that the gedder of Rosh Hashanah is only negeya for hafsaka, that it stops. We're looking for Rosh Hashanah, that something new begins. The Melech, this begins his anniversary. This is the first Yom Tiv. This is the beginning of Ma'aseh Behemer, Rosh Hashanah Leilonis, Rosh Hashanah L'Shmitten, Rosh Hashanah L'Yedlis, whatever the Rosh Hashanah is. Therefore, he doesn't. Rashi says, "Ba'afsaka loy kamaydi," but Rosh Hashanah da'afsaka loy kamaydi.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.